Hey audio friends, welcome back to the channel. MrAyrit here, and this is a special video for me and maybe a bit controversial. So just a little bit about me before we get into this video is that I love audio, obviously, which is why I'm doing this channel, but I don't want to have oddly enough, because I have a bunch of money sunk into it right now, but I don't want to be that way. And really, from the get-go, for me, this hobby has always been about getting an adequate, or what I consider to be, an excellent sound quality for as little money as possible. Now, that's not saying that I'm not willing to spend money on the hobby and to invest in, more expensive gear. I mean, I have limits to what I can invest, but I have been using the Socris 2541 DAC, and I love that DAC, and it's phenomenal quality, and it's certainly better than anything else I've tried up to this point as far as DACs go. However, I never thought that I would have that much money into a DAC, and I don't really want to have that much money into a DAC. I do think that the DAC, while it is extremely important, obviously, I mean, it is what is taking your digital signal and turning it into your music, actually, I do feel like it probably makes the least amount of difference when it comes to tuning your sound, right? And so having that be, at this point in time, my most expensive piece of gear that I'm using on a day-to-day basis, because my main chain right now is the Socris 2541 into either the Gen 1 Schiit Mjolnir or the Felix Audio Echo Gen 1. And then my main headphones of choice right now are the 8XX. So 8XX was $650. The Mjolnir was like $300 or $350. The Felix Audio Echo was like $500. And so that leaves me with, again, the Socris being my most expensive piece of gear. And again, that's the one that I think makes probably the least amount of difference when it comes to tuning your audio to your preferences. So I don't want to have that much money in a DAC, but I do love R2R. I definitely think like R2R, Multibit, whatever, is certainly where my preferences sit over any of the Delta Sigma stuff that I've heard. And the great news, unfortunately, the bad news up to this point has been that it's a little difficult to get into Multibit or R2R, right? I tried the Socris 1321 and I wasn't super impressed with that. I had the Bifrost 2, but again, that's like a $600, $700 DAC, although now it's even more expensive because they just updated it. And then I had the Modi Multibit, which I think is a good DAC, and I haven't reviewed yet, but I will. But it wasn't quite up to what I wanted to be, or didn't quite suit my preferences, right? So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm sticking with the Socris for now. However, in the last month or so, I have gotten a new DAC, and I think it's going to be the one that I keep. And to be perfectly honest with you, I just bought a second one so I can use it with both my systems, both at my main listening desk here in my office and at my bedside table. And who knows, I may even purchase a third that will go to my work. So the DAC that I'm talking about is, oddly enough, a dongle DAC, and it is the Cayin RU6 R2R dongle, right? And I know that's maybe a shocker, and I haven't seen a ton of reviews on this device, and boy, I just want to get the word out, because if you are looking to try an R2R DAC and you haven't been able to find one that you thought was a decent price, well, these guys, they're maybe like $250 new, and I'll link down to that down below. They're not widely available, really, only from a couple of retailers as far as I can see, but they're pretty regular coming up on the used market for $200 or even a little bit less. So I think this is a phenomenal piece of kit, especially if you haven't tried R2R yet. Now, maybe it's not going to suit everybody's, use case and things like that, but for me, it's really working for me, and it's $200, which is a perfectly acceptable amount of money to spend, and it actually is pretty versatile in that you can use it mobile too, which is cool. And I will also kind of show you how I get it set up for my desktop or bedside use as well. So let's dive into this little device. I'm going to tell you how it sounds, what I like about it. I'll go over little quirks maybe that you'll have to deal with if you're going to use something like this. And then we'll see if I can sell you on giving it a shot. All right. I'm not affiliated with Cayin in any way. I don't even know if that's how you say it. This is their first product that I've tried. Nobody sent this to me, not any audio stores or anything like that. So both of my units were just bought by me on the used market like I usually do. So I'm not trying to shill anything. The link that I'll put down below is not an affiliate link. All right. So I like this device and I think it's worth giving it a look. Again, if you want to try R2R, or if you have an expensive R2R DAC and you don't like having that much money in your DAC, maybe you can try one of these and see if it does what you need it to do. So let's look at the unit. We'll look at what you get with it, and of course we'll get into sound. Okay, so the unit itself is fairly simple, right? We'll talk more in depth here with function here in a moment, but as size comparison, here's Q-Deluxe 5K. So not too much. I mean, it's a little bit thinner. It doesn't have any clips or anything like that. You got USB-C coming in, and this isn't Bluetooth or anything like that, right? It's got to be wired. And then you've got a 4.4 balance Pentacon coming out, as well as a 3.5. The 3 buttons are just volume up, volume down, and a mode button. There aren't a lot of things you can change. I'll get in and I'll show you those here in just a moment, but that's the unit itself. Now, it doesn't come with this, but you can buy a case, and this is what that case looks like. So just to show you here, all right, it just goes on here. You slip it in like this. Okay, now there's 2 main issues I have with the case, and I wouldn't really recommend you even bother with it. I mean, I get that people want to protect it, but I found it more annoying than anything else. Okay, now you don't know which button is which over on the side, and they're all exactly the same shape. So that can be confusing, and honestly, even though I've been using it quite a bit, I still get the volume up and volume down messed up. I still hit the wrong buttons when I'm trying to use it if I can't just look at them. So that's one thing I don't like about the case. Also, the case just isn't secure. It slides, whenever you're using it, it slides around, it'll come out a little bit, and then the buttons don't line up right. So ultimately, the case for me, I just didn't like it. I'm sure you could hack and put a little rubber band or something over there to keep it in, or something like that. You could probably do it, but then you don't have a nice looking case anymore. So I think skip the case, but that's up to you, obviously. Okay, so what does it come with? Well, it's hard for me to know since I bought both of mine used. What this one came with, and this looks to be standard as far as I can tell, is you've got a USB-C to USB-C cable in there that's just a few inches long, and then there's this little adapter here that's regular USB-A to USB-C. Okay, now I got this isn't a Cayin, but mine also came with just a Lightning to USB-C adapter, and that seems to work just fine. I'm not sure what brand this is, but I'll link to one that would certainly work if you need that functionality here. Okay, so really not a ton of stuff that it comes with. Now here's what I have to make it work for a desktop setup, right? And these aren't expensive cables. I mean, you could get whatever. I mean, obviously cables are one of those things that you could spend as much money as you want to spend on them, but I've got a 3.5 to RCA if you want to do single-ended out, and that's just an Amazon Basics cable. It's like $7 or something like that. And then I got one of these. I don't remember the brand, but I'll link it down below, and this is a 4.4 cable to dual XLR to use the balanced out. You can use balanced and single-ended out at the same time, so it will output that, so you could have it going to a balanced like I do, like so I can have it going to the Mjolnir, and I can have it going to my single-ended Felix Audio tube amp at the same time. Works totally fine. Didn't have any issues with that at all. So that's how I use mine. All right. So let's dive in a little bit more to the device here, and we'll kind of look at the functions that it has in it, and we'll talk about, just kind of how I use it, and then we'll get into sound. Before, I'll go ahead and I'll hook it up to my iPhone just so we can look at, what functions it does, okay? Okay, so to get mine all hooked up here, just to make it work, I'm going to do, just the regular iPhone kind of dongle cable. I'm going to go just a regular USB-C cable, and then I'm going to go into the Cayin like that. So that's just another option for hooking it up, if you got that stuff lying around. All right. So what do we got? We've got volume up, volume down. You can see, you can read that right on the device here. Okay, you hold down the mode button, and then you can see you got gain, high, low. You got sampling, and you go no oversampling or oversampling. And then you got how long will the backlight stay on. And that is it. Okay, that is all there is to the functionality of this device. Now, oversampling versus no oversampling. I mean, I did it a little bit. I don't think it makes a ton of difference. I normally am listening to either YouTube music or Apple lossless at this point in time, or Tidal. I kind of switch, with my lossless stuff. But so I didn't notice a ton of difference there. But let's look at the specs real quick on power output, just so you have those numbers, and then we'll jump into sound. Okay, so things you might want to know is it does PCM, it does 44.1 up to 384 hertz, it's 24-bit, and it will do DSD 64, 128, and 256, okay? Power output on this thing for 32 ohms for both of these is 138 milliwatts for single-ended, and 213 milliwatts for the balanced, and the single-ended is 0.5 volts, and the balanced is 1 volt. Okay, so is it super powerful? No. Will it drive most things fine? Yes. I didn't have, I tried Sennheiser 660S out of it. I tried some Grado stuff out of it. I tried LCD 2C out of it. All that stuff sounded fine. I mean, if you're don't try to drive an HE6 out of it or something like that, right? But if you're keeping within the normal limits of typical use headphones or IEMs, I think you're fine. For IEMs, I didn't hear any noise or anything like that out of really sensitive stuff. The one thing that was a little bit annoying when I was using it was as you change the volume, sometimes, not every time, but as you change the volume, sometimes there are pops and little just clicks and things like that you hear. That's not a huge issue for me because I'm using it mainly as a DAC, and then I'm adjusting the volume with my amplifiers. So that was an issue for me, but I know it was a deal breaker for some people. I saw some people really criticize it for that, and I can understand that, but it wasn't a big issue for me. The other issue that came up, and I'm just going to link to this down below, is one of my patrons pointed out that he bought this and he loves it, but he did say he was having an issue with it hooking up to his he was using a Raspberry Pi streamer, which I use sometimes too, and he was having some issues with it having distortion and things like that. I'm not going to go, I couldn't recreate that for my use case. Granted, I haven't used it too much with my Raspberry Pi streamer, but I'll link to that if you're concerned about that. I had none of those issues. I never had an issue with any of that when I was using it out of my Mac or out of my iPhone. Never had a problem. Even, like I said, when I was using my Raspberry Pi, I didn't have an issue with that. But it seems to exist, and more than one person has encountered that problem. So just be aware of it if you use a Linux-based streamer of some sort. So outside of that, let's talk sound, right? And basically in a nutshell, right? And this, I'm sure, you know, there's exceptions to this rule and things like that, but my perception is R2R, it just sounds, the term I'm going to use is organic, and I know that maybe is like an audiophile term that, you know, is ambiguous, but when you're listening to an R2R DAC or the Cayin DAC, it just, it's not as sharp as the typical Delta Sigma DAC. It seems to be maybe not as wide, but they tend to have just more depth. I think a lot of it comes a lot of times into like in between the notes, and just like how things attack and decay just seems more natural to me with an R2R setup. The clarity on the Cayin RU6 is not as great as the Socus 2541, you know, but is that a huge surprise? I mean, you're talking about a DAC, a $200 DAC versus something that's like $1,000 more than it, right? So is it the last word in every single little bit of detail and clarity in your music? No, but if that's what you're going for, you're probably barking up the wrong tree with a low dollar R2R DAC. What I will say the Cayin is it has a lot of depth. It brings you into the music. It's maybe not quite as dynamic, but it's a little more subdued perhaps in how it presents sounds, but it's also kind of an easy listening, you know, you just don't, it's not a like, it doesn't put you on the edge of your seat. It's not super etched or sharp or anything like that. It just sounds relaxed and natural and easy, and just adds this organic depth to the music that just sounds wonderful to me, and is really the sound that I'm kind of settling into, that I enjoy. And then you might think that like pairing something like this with like a tube amp, like an OTL, like the Felix Audio Echo, would be over the top, and it'd be too, you know, mushy and wouldn't resolve enough. But I don't think so at all. I find the Cayin RU6 to the Felix Audio to my 8XX, I find that a wonderful combination to listen to, and just, I don't know, I just don't think about it that much when I'm listening to it. I just listen to it and I go, man, this stuff sounds good, you know? Every now and then a track will come along where it, you know, maybe loses some definition that I kind of miss and want it to be there, but all in all, I love this little device, and I think it sounds wonderful. And again, I'm not trying to say that it's the end all be all, that it's, you know, as good as the 2541. Again, the 2541, as far as just resolution and definition and clarity, is gonna win, right? But how much of that do you need? How much resolution is acceptable, right? How much clarity is acceptable in your music? And here's an analogy that I want to put forward for you in sort of a comparison. Now, I'm a video game guy, okay? So think about the Nintendo Switch versus, you know, the new Xbox or PS5, right? So you're talking 720p versus 4K. Now, your gut reaction is going to be, oh, well, 4K is better, hands down. No worries about that. Here would be the argument that I would put forward, right? Why can they still sell Nintendo Switches for full price in 2022 when it's such an old console and it's only 720p? And it's because the art style in a lot of those Nintendo games is just special, right? And like Breath of the Wild, take that game for example, right? It's a beautiful game, beautiful art style. It just, they take such advantage of what that modest system can do, but with a proper art style, like, you don't miss the 4K resolution or anything like that, because those games, specifically something like Breath of the Wild, like, it's gorgeous and it's fun and it works. So my point would be is that I would take a 720p game with beautiful art that's well executed any day over a 4K game with, you know, dull art style or unoriginal art style, and the ultimate resolution of something that doesn't look that good or interesting to begin with. And that's what I think the Cayin RU6 is. This is the Nintendo Switch with a great Nintendo IP made game, compared to say a Delta Sigma is a generic AAA PS5 game or something like that, right? Like, they both have their place and they both can be super fun, but don't knock the one that's lower resolution just because it's lower resolution, right? You got to give it a try to see what it can offer first, and I would wager that in many cases you might enjoy it even more than something that's super resolving. I hope that makes sense, and I think that's probably as much as I need to say about the RU6. Is it going to work for everybody? No. But again, if you have been wanting to try something R2R and you just haven't been able to find something that was reasonably priced to try it with, I would say look for an RU6, buy it on the used market for $200 or less, and if you don't like it, turn around and sell it. But it is absolutely worth trying out just so you can see. Maybe you'll try it and you'll think you like it, but you want to try a higher level R2R. Well, then you're going to start getting into some money that you're spending, right? But this will at least let you test out to see whether or not the flavor of it is something that you might enjoy. And that's why I think this is such an amazing device. Again, it's my main DAC right now, and I'm going to sell my Socris because this is good enough for me, and it does what I want it to do, and it does it in a way that I enjoy. So if that's not what audio and what trying things out in this hobby is all about, then I don't know what is. So if you like that kind of attitude towards audio and hi-fi and this type of stuff, consider subscribing to the channel, because that's really what I'm all about here. If this helped you out, again, some affiliate links and stuff down below for some of the accessories and stuff I mentioned here. But again, I would totally recommend you look on the used market for an RU6, but I will link to any retailer that I can find that is stocking it. That will not be an affiliate link. Again, I'm not trying to shill anything here. I just would encourage you to try this device and see what you think about it. So thanks as always for your time. I appreciate your support, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.